I apologize as this might be a long one, but I just found out something so devastating I'm still in shock. Maybe writing everything down will help me process it, and that's the only reason this post exists. This is a burner account, and I'm using fake names for everyone because some of the people involved do use Reddit, and I don't want any drama. So I'll give you guys some backstory. I am a 31-year-old male, met my best friend Jack, a 31-year-old male, when we were both in college. We were both in the same dorm and decided to move out to an apartment after a couple of semesters. He was a good guy. We came from similar families and bonded over our love for hiking. Throughout college and even after that, we remained close friends because we ended up working in the same city. Obviously, we've had many girlfriends throughout the years, and there was never any trouble between us about women, or anything at all actually. Fast forward to a few years. I met my wife, a 29-year-old female, at a bar. Coincidentally, Jack was with me that night and actually was my wingman. I thought my wife was incredibly hot and was too nervous to go up to her, so Jake helped me out. We got talking, I bought her a few drinks, and the rest is history, as they said. At that point, Jack and I were not living together anymore. After dating for a year, I moved in with my wife, and a year after that, we were engaged. Jake and my wife got along well. We often hung out together and even went on a couples trip when he was in a serious relationship. I think I should tell you guys a little about that relationship too, because that girl is the whole reason I found out about what happened. So shortly before I proposed to my wife, Jack started dating a girl, Stacy. They met through a dating app, and personally, I'm not a huge fan of dating apps, so I was always skeptical of this relationship. But to everyone's surprise, Jack and Stacy actually got along well and got into a serious relationship. They even went on a trip with us and helped me propose to my wife. Stacy and my wife got along as well, and I was really happy because Jack had a couple of bad experiences with women in the past, and I really did want him to meet someone nice and maybe settle down. So things were going well, and I was planning my wedding. Jack was my best man, and even though Stacy wasn't a part of our wedding party, my wife has 3 sisters and they were the only bridesmaids, she was involved in the wedding planning and was growing pretty close to my wife. Everything was great, and I was actually joking around with Jack, saying maybe he should pop the question to Stacy as well. He didn't take me seriously, but it was all fun and games. Fast forward to my wedding day. We had everything planned really well and didn't expect any trouble, but I guess something or the other always goes wrong on these events. And on the day of the wedding, our officiant canceled because he got into an accident and broke both his legs. He was actually a close friend of my dad, so we were all very upset, and I had to run to the hospital to check up on him and had to leave my wife and Jack with the responsibility of figuring out how to get a new officiant at such short notice. I apologized to both of them for not being there, but that man was practically an uncle to me, so I felt like I had to go. Anyway, thankfully the accident wasn't fatal, and he was just given 2 casts for his legs and bed rest. I hurried back to the wedding venue and found out that it was actually Stacy who had managed to find an officiant. I thanked her, and the rest of the day went as planned. My wife was what I perceived to be as adorably nervous, and the ceremony was beautiful. Everyone had a great time, and we left for our honeymoon the day after the wedding. We came back 2 weeks later, and I went over to Jack's apartment to give him and Stacy some gifts we had brought back from Hawaii. My wife chose to stay home because she was feeling tired and a little sick from all the traveling. Jack opened the door, and I went inside as usual and asked where Stacy was. He looked nervous for a second and told me that they had broken up after the wedding and she had moved out. This came as a surprise because, as far as I knew, they were doing pretty well. I asked him what happened, but he wouldn't say much about it and just said that it happened for the best. I tried asking him about what happened, but he seemed to get very triggered by the subject. I thought it was best not to push him since he seemed hesitant to talk about it, so I changed the subject by talking about the trip. I did some hiking, and I thought he'd like to hear about that since it had been a while since the 2 of us went hiking together, but he stopped me almost mid-sentence and said that he had something important to tell me. I asked him if everything was all right, and he said that he had received a job offer from a firm in London. He is a lawyer, and with the breakup and everything, he thought it was a good idea to change his surroundings and that he had accepted it. He said that he'd be moving within the week. I was overwhelmed by all this information. I had known this guy for nearly a decade, and he had always been the most stable, meticulous person I knew. He was literally the last person I'd expect to suddenly move to a different country, that too apparently because of a breakup. I asked him if he was sure about all this and that maybe he should think a little more, because it was a huge step, and he didn't know anyone in the UK. He seemed strangely adamant about it, and we even had a little argument, because he said that he didn't need my approval. I mean, I wasn't saying that, I was just looking out for my best friend. I didn't want to fight just before he left, though, so I apologized to him and told him that I'll always support him. I told him that he should come over to my house for dinner once before he left and meet my wife, because I was sure she'd miss him too, as we spent a lot of time together. He said he'd try, but he was busy with the move and couldn't promise anything. I went home feeling weird about the whole thing and told my wife. She also looked shocked, and we spent some time talking about how sudden everything was. Jack ended up moving hardly a couple of days after I met him. I insisted on dropping him off at the airport, even though he kept saying he'd be fine on his own. It felt like he was trying to avoid me, but I thought he was just upset about the whole thing and didn't want to get emotional or second-guess his decisions. We did stay in contact once he left, but things obviously weren't the same. He hardly ever reached out to me, and at this point we only wish each other for the holidays or birthdays, and that's pretty much done. I never really understood what happened to him, but there's only so much you can do for a friendship where only one person seems to care. It's been 3 years since I got married and Jack moved to the UK. My wife and I have a beautiful baby girl now who is the absolute love of my life. So that's all about how the two people I loved most in my life betrayed and made a fool of me for 3 years. The reason I'm writing this post now is because Jack moved back to the States recently. I heard this from an old mutual friend of ours and was surprised that he didn't tell me. Even our friend was surprised that I didn't know, because he knew how close we used to be and thought that things were the same now. Anyway, the whole thing kinda upset me, and I went home and told my wife about what happened. I told her that I was thinking of calling him up and the three of us getting together again after all this time, and he could finally meet the baby. For some reason, this made my wife fly into an absolute rage. She got really angry and started saying stuff like I should stop being so obsessed about Jack, and that maybe if he wanted to have contact he would reach out, and how I'm embarrassing myself for clinging on to an old college friendship and should find better things to do with my time. She also said that she doesn't want our daughter to meet some random man who isn't even a part of our lives, and I should just drop it. After this random rage fit, she just took our daughter and left, saying she's going to spend the day with a friend. I was more confused than ever. My wife had never even hinted that she disliked Jack. They always got along well, and all of the things she said about me being obsessed with Jack made even less sense. I mean, I just wanted to meet an old friend. That's a far cry from obsession. After thinking a lot about what happened and still finding no sense, I thought it would be best to just attribute that whole scene to my wife being in a bad mood about something. I thought I'd just talk to her later when she was feeling better and decided to go ahead and call Jack. I called him twice, but he didn't pick up. I thought he might be busy and would call me back later, but after a whole day, there wasn't a single text or call from him. This just made me overthink more, and I wondered if my wife was right about me clinging on to a dead friendship. When she came back from her friend's place that night, I apologized to her and said she was right. She asked me how I had the change of mind, and I told her about Jack not picking up. I thought she'd be sympathetic, but she just became really angry at me for calling him. Despite our fight that morning, I slept on the couch that night. All of this happened last week. Things between me and my wife have been weird ever since, and I couldn't figure out for the life of me why this was such an issue. Until now. This morning I was at the store buying some stuff for my daughter because it has started to get pretty cold where I live. I was trying to decide on jackets when I saw a familiar face in the aisle. It was Jack's old girlfriend, Stacy. I hadn't seen her since their breakup, and she was obviously very pregnant. I decided to go up to her and say hi. She was surprised to see me, and we got talking, and I found out she got married and has a toddler. We decided to sit down for coffee at a Starbucks next door, and I congratulated her, and we talked about raising toddlers and stuff like that. I always really liked Stacy and thought it was a shame they broke up. Since she was obviously in a committed relationship and had a family, I couldn't help but ask her what happened with Jack all those years ago, because he never really told me. At the mention of his name, she looked uncomfortable, so I apologized immediately and said I shouldn't have asked her, but Jack had been on my mind recently, so I couldn't help myself. She asked me why I was thinking of all that, even though it had been years, and I told her about Jack moving back to the States. Her face completely changed at that, and she asked me if we had met. I told her about how he was ignoring my calls. She told me that maybe it's best if I leave him alone. The way she said it reminded me of my wife, and I couldn't help but ask why they both hated him so much, and if they could tell me, I'd be grateful. She asked me what I meant, and I told her about my wife throwing a temper and storming out at the mention of his name. She looked really uncomfortable and suddenly said that she had to go. I was surprised because we had just gotten her drink and told her I was sorry if I made her uncomfortable and she could stay and finish her drink and I could leave instead if she wanted. She gave me a really weird look and said that she didn't want to hurt me, but maybe it's time I found out what really happened. I was confused and asked her what she meant. I could have been given 1,000 guesses and still wouldn't have said what she ended up saying. She told me that when I was visiting my uncle in the hospital on my wedding day, she walked in on Jack and my future wife in a store at the back of the venue. For the first few seconds, I just stared at her. My next reaction was to laugh because that had to be a joke, right? But her silence was like getting punched in the gut. I told her she must have misunderstood and that they'd never betray me like that. She sighed and took her phone out and showed me old screenshots of conversations between her and my wife, where she was begging her not to say anything to me. Lots of things were said, and it was clear what happened. Stacy told me that she couldn't bring herself to delete these screenshots because somewhere in her heart she knew that someday I'd find out. We stayed there talking for a while and she left. I sat there for hours wondering what to do with my life. I made it back home quite late. My daughter was already asleep. I told my wife I wasn't feeling great and went straight to bed and pretended to be asleep. It's well after midnight now that I'm writing this post. She's asleep in our bed. I constantly feel like throwing up. I don't know what to do. I thought I had the perfect family. If it wasn't for my daughter, I'd probably just pack my bags and leave. She's the best thing that's ever happened to me, but now I'm wondering if she's actually my biological daughter or not. She was born 10 months after our wedding, and we always thought she was conceived during the honeymoon, but now I just don't know. I want to do a paternity test in secret. I think I'm going to confront my wife tomorrow. I'll deal with Jack after that. I hope I'm doing the right thing. Would it be wrong for me to take a paternity test without informing my wife? Update 1. Damn, I wasn't expecting this post to blow up. I had half a mind to delete the whole thing when I woke up this morning, but I'll keep it now that everyone's so invested. Haha. I've slept on it and woke up feeling determined about getting the paternity tests. I'm still going through comments, and most of you also agree that it's my right to know about it. I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Also, no, I haven't spoken to Stacy since we met. I don't want to drag her into this issue, and I'm just grateful that she decided to tell me. I wish I found out before I married this woman, but there's no point in mulling over that, I guess. I'll let you guys know about the results of the paternity test. Update 2. Sorry to keep you all waiting. I've been getting tons of DMs and comments asking for an update, but I've been busy obviously and needed time to really process what happened and figure out what to do with my life now that my family is ruined. So the results of the paternity test came back, and it's my worst nightmare. My daughter isn't biologically mine. I don't have words to explain how I'm feeling right now. I'm absolutely devastated. She's the love of my life. She will always be my daughter, though, and I am her only real father, and nothing can change my mind about this, but I want to divorce my wife and never see her again, and I just don't know if I'll be able to get custody of my daughter because of the way things are. I've spoken with a lawyer, and we're starting the paperwork for the divorce. I still haven't confronted my wife. That's just because I know her and I know she'll create a huge scene, and I just want to be ready with the paperwork and everything before I confront her. I've lied to her about being on a business trip and have been living in a hotel for the past week because I know I won't be able to maintain my composure if I had to live in the same house and sleep in the same bed as her. Even the thought of her is revolting. I'm angry, hurt, and disgusted. I couldn't have imagined this in my worst nightmare. To think that the woman I saw as the love of my life and the man I loved like a brother would betray me like this and lie to my face every day for 3 years is horrifying. I'm going home today and I'm going to confront her. Honestly, I don't know if I'll be able to put in any more updates, but I'll try to. Thank you to everyone for checking up on me and for the supportive comments. Update 3. Sorry for leaving you guys hanging for the last couple of days. Apparently, turning your life upside down means you need some time to be even slightly stable. Haha. I don't even know where to start, and I'm sorry if I don't make perfect sense. I'm going through an incredibly difficult time and can't think straight. Half the reason I'm writing this is because I'm hoping that, like the first time, this will again help me collect my thoughts. I decided to confront my wife a few days after my last update. I waited for her to get back from work with the paternity test in hand. My daughter was thankfully asleep by then. Anyway, she walked in and I asked her to sit down. She could tell from my voice that something was wrong and asked me what was up. I told her to just sit, and once she did, I just handed her the test reports. She looked at it for a long time and just started sobbing. She said that she hated herself for what happened and wanted to tell me but didn't want to destroy our family. I told her that she destroyed our family the moment she decided to do what she did. She kept crying and begging me to forgive her and not let this destroy our family, but honestly, I was numb at that point and was actually disgusted by her tears. I told her to stop wasting her time and asked her to just tell me what happened so I could find some closure. She told me that she was having cold feet on the day of the wedding and didn't know what to do. Her bridal party was getting their hair and makeup done, and she didn't want to tell anyone because she already felt guilty and knew that everyone would just tell her the things she already knew about going through with the wedding and everything. She wanted to talk to me, but I wasn't there, obviously, since I was at the hospital. So she wanted to get away from everything and smoke a cigarette to calm herself down. The only person in the wedding party who smoked was Jack, and so she asked him if he had any cigarettes on him, and he did. They went to the storeroom to have a smoke without being seen by anyone. Jack went there first and she followed him there. She didn't think anyone saw them, but apparently Stacy saw her. So she went there and was smoking with Jack, talking about how she was feeling, and one thing led to another and they kissed, and well, we all know what happened next. She said she was in a nervous daze and didn't realize what was happening until Stacy walked in on the two of them, and they were both half-dressed at that point. Stacy obviously freaked out, and that brought her back to reality in her own words. She started crying and begging her to hear them out, and apparently Jack told her to get dressed and fix herself and that he would handle it. She left quickly and didn't know what Jack told Stacy, but nothing happened, and the rest of the ceremony went as planned. She said she didn't know about the pregnancy till after our honeymoon and didn't know who the father could be. She kept sobbing and apologizing to me throughout all this. I listened to everything, put the divorce papers on the table and asked her to sign them, and left. She tried to stop me, but I just left. I went to my car and drove away from the house. On the way, I texted Jack saying I know what happened and he should have the damn courage to face me at least. He called me in 10 minutes and asked if I'd like to meet. I met him at the apartment where he was staying. I honestly thought I'd be super pissed at him and was scared of hurting him and getting into trouble, but by the time I rang that doorbell, I was just completely defeated. He looked much different than he did when I last saw him. We sat down and I just asked him why. He said he didn't know, he wasn't thinking. He said the same things my wife said. I asked him if he knew my daughter was biologically his, and he said he didn't know for sure but always felt like she was. He said he couldn't face me after that, and that's the only reason he left the country. He apologized for lying to me and ruining everything. That's when I lost it and punched him straight in the face. He didn't fight back. The divorce papers were signed, and I've spoken to her about the custody, and she said she is okay with me being the primary caregiver for our daughter and will agree to any terms I want. Obviously, she isn't getting a cent from the divorce, so that's the only good thing in my life right now. I hope things go smoothly, that's all.